Hi, boys and girls. It's Grandma Sheila again. I have a fun, wonderful story for today, for you, for this week. The story's called The Little Sisters. Well, it took place in the era of one-room schools, so that's been a long time ago. Well, on this morning, Miss Miller, the school teacher, it was time for the recess, and all the kids had run joyfully outside to play in the sunshine. But she noticed one little girl sitting at her desk, and she was frantically working on math problems. Well, the teacher came back to see her, and she touched her head gently, and she said, "You weren't here yesterday in school. Is everything all right?" Well, Mary Gray, she looked up at the teacher, kind of embarrassed at the question. And finally she said, "Well, you know, my mother's not always well. And so she works really hard to support us. She's a widow, you know. So it's not always convenient for both of us girls to go at the same time." Well, the teacher didn't ask any more questions. She sat down beside the girl, and the girl was working on long division, and she was puzzled. So the teacher sat there and gently explained the rules for long division, and the girl immediately got the answer and was able to go on to the others. The teacher said, "You know, you've studied really hard today. Why don't you go outside and get some fresh air?" The girl, she kind of looked at her and she said, I don't think so." The teacher said, "But it might make you feel good." And she said, uh, "I couldn't. I might tear my dress." But then, because she didn't want to make the teacher unhappy, she said, "I'll go to the window and watch the rest playing." The teacher didn't say any more. Well, the next day, she noticed that Nellie Gray was there, but Mary wasn't. She thought, there's something funny about this. And then she got to looking at the little girl's dress, and she thought, you know, it looks just like the calico dress that her sister wore yesterday. Matter of fact, it's got to be the same dress. And then when the little girl stood up, she noticed that it didn't fit as well on Nellie as it had on Mary. But the little girl was so anxious to be there, and she studied so hard and was getting really good grades. But why? Why was she going just every other day? Both girls were good students. Well, the next day, Mary was back in school, and the teacher found an opportunity to ask her a couple questions. She said, "Nellie was in school yesterday, and she did really well. She seemed so excited to be here." Why, really, Why can't you girls both come? We'd love to have you at school. Well, Mary thought for a long time, and then she said, well, Mother didn't let us go to school in the winter because we didn't have any warm clothes to wear. So she told us that we could go to school in the spring if between now and spring we could get some odd jobs from some of the neighbors and maybe earn enough money to buy a second dress. The teacher was correct in what she had thought. It was the same dress the little girls were wearing, the two sisters. And she said, I started to come to school when spring came, but at the end of the winter, Nellie had gotten sick and Mother didn't have enough money. So we had to use Nellie's money for medicine. So I had a dress, but she didn't. And for the first week or so, I came to school every day, and nobody knew I had a little sister. But then, every morning when I left, I could feel Nellie's eyes on me. Nellie's 18 months old, younger than I am. She's my little sister. And I couldn't bear it, Miss Miller. She watched me go with such longing every day that I thought there had to be some way that she could go to school too. Well, at first I told Mom that I should just stay home if Nellie couldn't go, and she said, no, you better not, because you can teach your sister some at least. So that's when I had come. But then after watching Nellie being sad every day, I just couldn't do it. And on that afternoon when I was on my way home, I thought of the plan. She could come one day and I could come the next, and we could share the same dress. And the teacher thought, aha, that's why the dress doesn't fit Nellie as well, and it's too long for her. But she didn't say anything to Mary. And Mary went on. She said, so we decided that she would go one day and I would stay home. And she would come home after school and she would teach me everything that she could remember from that day of school. And the next day I would come to school and I would teach her that night everything I had learned. And it was working. But obviously Mary was embarrassed. And the teacher said, I understand now. You're both very good students, and I'd wondered why you didn't both come. But now I understand. Well, nothing more was said about that pink and white dress with the big flowers all over it. But that night, the teacher got to thinking about it. Being a school teacher, she didn't make much money, so she didn't have much extra. In those days, all the ladies wore gloves, and gloves didn't last very long. So Miss Miller had been saving for a new pair of gloves that she knew she would need during the middle of summer. But that night, she got out her money and she went to the general store. And sure enough, she was able to find a pink flowered dress made just like Mary's dress in Nellie's size. And she took it to the counter of the general store and she talked to the man that owned the store. She said, "Can you have it delivered to Nellie's house, Nellie Gray's house, in a way that nobody knows where it came from?" Well, the store man, the store owner, he was a kind man. And he said, "It'll be done, Miss Miller." So that night, a package with that dress just like her sister's arrived. Yes, it wasn't a fancy dress. It was made of calico. It was cheap, some people would say. But Monday morning, both girls came to school. And were they ever happy? Well, Nellie, she put her stuff, she came a little early, she and Mary had. She put all of her stuff in her desk and she hurried up to the teacher. And it was like she was about to burst with excitement. And she said, "Oh, Miss Miller, you'll never know what happened. Last night we got a box and teacher, look, it had a dress in it that fits me perfect, just like sister's. The same pattern, the same color, everything. I'm so excited. And you know what? Now I can go to school every single day, teacher. Every single day. Both Mary and I can come now." And the teacher, she said, "But will it be convenient for your mother, for both of you to be gone?" The little girl, she got a little worried look on her face, but then she said, "Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mother thinks it's a wonderful idea." Well, then the little girl, like she couldn't keep a secret any longer, burst out with her own little story. She told how the mother had moved there with the two girls after the father had died, and she tried her best to be able to support them, but there just wasn't enough money. And she was what they used to call delicate. She was frail, and that was just the way her body was. But she tried her best. And she was so sad to think that her girls wouldn't get an education just because they only had one dress. And then when my sister Mary came up with the idea of us sharing the dress, then we both got to go to school every other day. But oh, teacher, this is so much more wonderful. And mother's so happy. Well, the teacher sat there, and she'd never felt quite like she felt then. She finally got the feeling inside of what it meant to be more blessed to give than to receive. And you know, she thought the big millionaires in town, when they're praised for giving thousands of dollars to a charity, she thought, didn't feel any better than she felt buying that dress for that little girl. Think about it, boys and girls. Think about the joy of giving and helping somebody else. We'll see you next week. Bye bye now.